All right, welcome back to the channel. So the WBC does something that I am not surprised that the WBC would do, which is give fighters a nice free pass for the foreseeable future to take all of the performance enhancing drugs that they would like to, because they have announced that they want VADA to close its doors during the middle of this stuff that's going on. I think that that is borderline ridiculousness, not quite all the way ridiculousness, but borderline ridiculousness. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. So we are living in the middle of a quarantine country right now. And so as a result, there's a lot of things in boxing that is moving around, and fights getting canceled, fights getting pushed back, people not knowing what the deal is going to be. You got fighters that have spent, man, I know there's some fighters that are hurt. And my understanding is that there's at least one fighter, I think Arthur Beterbiev, who has spent $50,000 on his training camp, and now his fight is canceled, so he's out of that $50,000. This is a lot of craziness going on in the boxing world right now. One of the craziest, though, from a safety standpoint, is the testing of fighters for performance-enhancing drugs. And this is now the second organization that has talked about holding off on all performance-enhancing drugs for the foreseeable future. The first one was UKAD out there in the UK anti-doping, and now the second one is the WBC, the World Boxing Council, who is talking about suspending its clean boxing program. Now, I would say that that is really wild if they hadn't already basically canceled their clean boxing program when they did one of their other miraculously, a mind-blowingly pro-PED decisions that the WBC has been making lately. So the WBC decides that they're going to hold off on the clean boxing program. So during the time that this is going on. Now, what is the clean boxing program? The clean boxing program is a testing program for performance-enhancing drugs under the WBC banner that is conducted by VADA, which I think is voluntary anti-doping agency. It was run by, I think it's founded by Margaret Goodman, but it is supposed to be the best of the detection, PED detection, I know, organizations or protocols. I'm not sure which one what it calls, but they're the organization that has the best, quote, the best drug testing protocol out there, and it's called the Clean Boxing Program. Now, if you hold up the clean boxing program, what does that mean? It means that there's nobody out there that is, none of the fighters are having random, 24/7 random drug testing for the foreseeable future. And I suspect, since they announced when it was going away, that they will also announce when it's going to come back, right? So during the time that people are doing this, what do they have the ability to do? They have the ability to go out, get on performance enhancing drugs, take all the benefits that you can get out of it, up until it's time for them to start rolling off of it and in time for their next fight. And that's, to me, seems like this is just being a license to do. Now, I normally would not, because I mean, the argument on the other side of it is like, hey, well, we're cutting down the testing because we want to prevent the spread of this virus, right? And the way that we're going to do, the reason that we're not going to test people is because we don't want anything being given from one person to the other in the midst of this participating in this testing protocol. Now, I don't know if that's the case or if it's not the case, or whether or not you can during the testing protocol that you might be able to actually use some of the same safeguards that people at large are being held responsible for or being asked to participate in, with like standing with that, not being within 6 feet of the other person, whatever, what have you. I don't have any ideas whether they're able to do that or not. If they're not able to do that or feel like they're reliably able to do that, then hey man, really what can you do? You've got to, err on the side of being more being safe to the public at large, because one guy could give it to somebody else and they could have a small child or be somewhere around somebody that has respiratory problems or what have you, or they're over the age of 70, and then that can get handed over. So I do understand that is that's a real threat, and that's something that needs to be considered. At the same time though, for this to come from the WBC after the WBC already has so many really suspect decisions around performance enhancing drugs in the last couple years that, it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. You know what I mean? So like, for example, you have, what they did with Canelo Alvarez, besides just the franchise champion, right? Well, because they just seem so willing to bend over for certain fighters. But there's a franchise champion issue. That's where, they eliminated the necessity for certain fighters to fight mandatories because they're so important to the sport of boxing that they deserve just to be the champion no matter what, right? That's the Canelo Alvarez, Vasily Lomachenko franchise rule. But that was also around the same time of doing that. They also raised the acceptable levels of Cumbuterol that could be in a fighter system. And they did it, saying that what they were doing is raising their VADA standards or their clean boxing programs up to the level of what the World Anti-Doping WADA, World Anti-Doping Agency, is already doing. But, it just doesn't seem real right because you raise it just beyond the levels of what Canelo Alvarez had already tested positive for. So, and then when Canelo Alvarez, just listen to the attitude that the WBC has when certain fighters test positive for performance enhancing drugs. They just come out right away with this tremendous amount of support for them, and how we just know they're great guys and we're so proud of them to be the champion, even though, yes, he tested positive, but he had taken so many tests before earlier in his life and he didn't. It's just a cockamamie. The number one, the support for Canelo Alvarez on that Cumbuterol stuff was ridiculous out of the gate, but then to later change the levels, and then you go back to even earlier times with PEDs when Alexander Povetkin tested positive for against Deontay Wilder. Now the fight was canceled, but when Deontay Wilder was suing Alexander Povetkin for breach of contract, and Alexander Povetkin was suing Deontay Wilder, saying that that they need to release his money from escrow and give it back to the promoter. The person that was the linchpin in allowing Rubinsky, who was Alexander Povetkin's promoter, to get his money back after his fighter tested positive, the linchpin in that whole thing was Mauricio Sulaiman in the WBC, because the WBC refused to say in court whether or not testing positive for Maldonium violated their performance enhancing drug policy. And since Mauricio Sulaiman rode the fence with Alexander Povetkin and Rubinsky, Deontay Wilder is out the money that he was supposed to get for the fight, and out of the money for all the training and stuff that he did for the fight. But most importantly, that's another example of the WBC being extremely wishy-washy with their administration of their anti-doping rules. So you add this to just let's pause the whole drug testing thing, and it just leaves this taste in my mouth that that the WBC really does not care very much about performance enhancing drugs. I think that boxing by and large has given up on thinking that they can stop it or caring about whether they stop it or not, because they're willing to bust and pop some guys to some lower level people every once in a while. But even look at like Alejandro Jimenez. Alejandro Jimenez was actually accused of not just being on performance enhancing drugs, but she was accused of actually being a man, and the WBC immediately jumped to her defense like, this is just, you guys are just hating on her because of her choice of lifestyle and this, that, and the other thing. But then she pops dirty for performance enhancing drugs. And what does the WBC do? The WBC refuses to reinstate the other former champion and call the fight like, you know, like the fight didn't happen. They are going to put Jimenez back in the rankings and set her up for a situation where she can fight for their belt again, because they clearly want Jimenez to be their champion, regardless of whether or not she tested positive for performance enhancing drugs. Look at the reaction that they had when Tyson Fury, when Tyson Fury's alibi for popping dirty went bye-bye. They supported him in that as well. This doesn't seem like, so all in all, though, I understand where the WBC could be coming from on this particular issue. It just seems like this, when you look at their whole viewpoint on performance enhancing drugs, you know, you look at just how they have been executing and what they've been doing in that area lately, it just doesn't seem like they have much desire to stem the flow of performance enhancing drugs in boxing. It seems like they've either given up or they just never really cared. But anyway, that's my take from it. You let me know what you think in the comment section. With that, I'm out. Peace.